Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the CompBioMed series, webinar number 8. Today is the European Open Science Cloud, abbreviated EOSC. Today we will be being presented the EOSC Digital Innovation Hub, in specific the Open Data Services for Biomedicine and Business. My name is Ben Chaya. I'm a PhD from the University of Amsterdam, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Today's speaker is Cy Halsinger, who is the coordinator of the EOSC Digital Innovation Hub. I would like to remind everybody before we get started and before I pass the floor to Cy, that today's webinar will be recorded and put on the CompBioMed website after this webinar. In order to keep a clean webinar, we ask everybody to, if they have questions, there will be time after the presentation for questions, and if they can write them in the questions bar of this webinar, and I will read them aloud to Cy so Cy can answer them himself. So without further ado, I give the floor to Cy Halsinger.
Well, thanks very much for the introduction, and thank you for everybody who has joined online. Just to give you a quick introduction to myself, so my name is Cy Halsinger. My background is more in business management and communications, but I've been working in kind of this EC-funded project space since about 2007. So I work at the EGI Foundation, so we're a not-for-profit organization that's based in Amsterdam, and we coordinate a federated infrastructure providing compute storage and data management services to roughly 60,000 researchers that are spread across 30 countries and then globally. So within side of the company, I do more of their business development and support the strategy implementation and definition. But I've been managing these kind of industry engagement programs, which has been bridging, say, the research and academic space with the commercial market. I also do, with other hats on, work in the areas of professionalizing our service management delivery through some standards that are on the market. So therefore, I give some trainings in consultancy across the academic infrastructure space. With that regard. So here I'm going to be talking about mainly just trying to give you a small introduction to what is the European Open Science Cloud, the implementation project, one of the first implementation projects of this European Open Science Cloud initiative, which EGI is the coordinator of that project. Then kind of move into, well, a lot of representatives from industry and commercial sector kind of would like to understand, well, what roles can they play within inside of these kind of European initiatives? Then I'll go more, let's say, specifically into our Digital Innovation Hub, the overview and background of these Digital Innovation Hubs, the services that we're offering and that hopefully you guys can take advantage of, and some success stories that we've had to date, because this has been running for some time now. Just have a final conclusions and opportunities slide, which then we can move into any questions and that you guys may have. So just kind of briefly kind of touching upon what is the European Open Science Cloud and the EOSC-hub project. So the European Open Science Cloud, this is an initiative kind of pushed and developed by the European Commission to kind of support open science and innovation. But what it really is in practice is kind of a reduction of fragmentation. So for the last more than 10, 15, going back to 20 years, the European Commission has been kind of funding infrastructures, so providing networking components, and then to the advent of distributed computing, and then cloud computing, and then data infrastructures. So we have all of these number of different infrastructures and implementation projects that have been kind of funded and put into place over the last several years. And now the focus is, well, how can we kind of reduce that fragmentation and try to bring these services into a much more coherent and digestible way that we can then promote and showcase to researchers and the research communities and industries what services are actually available. So this is kind of coalescing. There's a central EOSC portal that they've put together, which is kind of trying to pull all of these services together so that researchers have a single access point to discover the services that have been funded. So this is an initiative, it's a concept point of view. So the EOSC-hub project is kind of that first implementation of it. So it's quite a large project. We have more than 100 partners that are spread across more than 30 countries. It's more than 30 million euro that has been funded mainly by the European Commission. It's a 3-year project. We're already halfway through it. So we plan on finishing somewhere at the end of next year. So the whole idea of this project is to pull together, yes, the underlying services that kind of that federate the infrastructure, but it's also the policies and the processes by which additional services can be brought in and integrated. And we have a number of different services, not just infrastructure services, but we also have individual scientific communities who are building value-added services on top of the infrastructure. So how can we integrate those and how can we expose them and how is this whole machinery operated? That's what this project is now really focusing on, is kind of the nuts and bolts of how the European Open Science Cloud concept could actually be put together in practice. So that kind of leads us, and that's really the hat that I'm wearing today, but kind of taking a step back and trying to look at industry participation in the European-wide landscape. So this is really around the European Commission's digital single market and really trying to digitize industry in order to bring them into modern operations. So there's a number of different sectors that EU industries work in. This ranges from manufacturing to robotics to software development. But more specifically, we can kind of dive into this kind of digitizing European industry and kind of look at, well, what are they talking about in terms of cloud infrastructures? So here they've already outlined that the European Open Science Cloud can play a pivotal role in introducing and facilitating industry's use of cloud computing. So cloud computing, but also high performance computing. And they specifically mention the European Open Science Cloud, as well as setting up this kind of pan-European network of digital innovation hubs. So what we want to do is we want to reuse existing strategies and existing structures that are already available across Europe and put them into place for a specific technologies or specific services or in a specific domain. So this is the reason and the rationale why we've kind of created this European Open Science Cloud Digital Innovation Hub. So where's the European landscape kind of fit in this kind of digitization? So there's a little bit of a misconception that companies are already digitized, or especially in large industry, that they've already done this. So really, what help could they even possibly want? But if you really kind of dig down into the data, you can kind of see that, yes, large enterprises have adopted cloud computing more than SMEs, small to medium enterprises, and they're also kind of taking more advantage of the wealth of data that's around, but not to any type of massive extent. And especially with the smaller enterprises, you can see that they're taking advantage less than what's actually possible. So they're only using about 20% of small to medium enterprises are using cloud services, and only 3% of them are analyzing their own big data. So there's an opportunity for the European Open Science Cloud to kind of support their transition or adoption to cloud computing, and trying to connect them to the wealth of research and open data that's available on the market. Then this is one other kind of from a conceptual point of view is well, what do we want to do with these kind of digital innovation hubs? And I think there's a really key concept that we can extract from this. And this is, I think, a really nice quote, which is test before you invest. And this is really what we want to make the digital innovation hubs available, which is bring together not just the services themselves, but the expertise around how to use these services, and create an environment in which companies can kind of come with either just an idea that they would like to see how this could be ported in a cloud environment, or they have, let's say, a specific tool or technology or service that prior to going to the market that they would like to do some demonstrations, some testing, some validation. And then sometimes they just purely need help to kind of move into the market. So there's this pre-commercial activities that is really a large portion of the effort that we can kind of help smaller organizations move into. So this kind of just breaks down to, okay, well then what roles can industry play? And sometimes whenever I hear that there's different ways that industry can interact with it, and it's actually just not one single way. So yes, one of them is from a customer point of view. We have existing services that the Commission would like us to make available for startups and SMEs to use. So yes, they have this kind of customer role, just purely using the available services. But it's not only just using the services. We also would like to offer an opportunity for them to provide services. So not always, and we should basically be looking at, from a research and academic space, not only to just develop our own tools and services because we want to develop our own tools and services, but understand what services already exist on the market for us to use. So there's a potential for commercial companies that have services where the research and academic space could be the customers of their services. Another one is more, let's say, we partner together in this kind of co-development point of view. So where they want to integrate their existing, let's say that they have a platform as a service or a software as a service, and they would like to integrate that with existing services. Or they would like to partner with the researcher who has expertise in a given field to help them kind of develop a product or service together. And then larger companies are kind of getting into this kind of commercial space. So right now, through the European Open Science Cloud, there are activities around procurement, which in the research space comes with its own rules and regulations, but we'd like to try to facilitate how we could do bulk purchasing of, let's say, large packages of services. And I think here large enterprises are starting to already, let's say, partner together with us and play a role here from a procurement point of view. So there's not really a one size fits all. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking for as an individual company and what the academic and research space can offer you depending on your specific needs and wants. So this kind of brings us then to the concept of Digital Innovation Hub itself, because I think it's quite important to understand that this isn't a concept or a mechanism by which we created ourselves and put a fancy buzzword next to it. This is an existing mechanism that's been put in place by the European Commission to try to establish this like ecosystem where startups and SMEs and large industries can come together with researchers and accelerators and investors to kind of create partnerships that stimulate this kind of innovation. So this kind of one-stop shop concept where we have access to specialist expertise, we can do brokering and matchmaking, so we understand what you need and then we understand the provider that's already on the market. We can create awareness about what's existing, so we're not reinventing the wheel all the time. Understanding what innovation's already available, where you're at in terms of organizational maturity, trying to support like strategy development for go-to-market strategies or commercialization opportunities, and as well as kind of mentoring. So it's just pulling all of this together to stimulate innovation. So right now there are some, let's say, large digital innovation hubs that have been kind of well established. One of them is called FIWARE, where they have 22 innovation hubs all over the world. I4MS, they're more focused, let's say, in the manufacturing space. And then the Commission has a dedicated funding program specifically for supporting and introducing new digital innovation hubs, whether sector specific or regional focused or European wide focused. There's all kinds of different innovation hubs out there. So since there are so many innovation hubs out there, what they tried to do was to pull this together in some type of catalog. So here, individual innovation hubs can register. So there's a standardized template by which you can kind of fill out what's your name, what services are you offering, what location base you're already in. So it's quite nice if you're looking for, let's say, specific services, or you're looking for what's maybe available in your specific geographical area. There's a way that you can kind of go and get in contact with innovation hubs that are already together. But that's kind of like a static list of services. It's very, let's say, it's not very dynamic. You can promote yourself or you can find them, but it's not really a community. It's just a catalog of existing innovation hubs. So what the Commission did was that they funded a project. It was called DIH Net, which is now trying to make the Digital Innovation Hub a much more of a community, where there's a way to interact with other innovation hubs and kind of create this networking effect. So it's just trying to make it a little bit more dynamic than a standard catalog. They've also launched a number of different working groups. As you can see, I've participated in the working group on digital innovation hubs, where I gave a presentation in Brussels on the 3rd of April, and they run these on at least like on a quarterly basis. The next one will be on the 1st of July in Brussels. Then they have other working groups on digital industry platforms and working groups on future partnerships, etc. So there's a number of different ways that you can get engaged on a European level. And finally here, just to kind of show that there's dedicated funding calls through the Horizon 2020 work program, where they've set aside a dedicated pot of funds to be able to support specific innovation hubs. Here you can see some of the areas in which they're funding: Smart Anything Anywhere, robotics, manufacturing, big data, etc. So there's a couple different ways in which you can also then look to get funding for setting up or being involved in a digital innovation hub. So this kind of then naturally brings us to pulling all of this together: the European Open Science Cloud, or other known as the EOSC Digital Innovation Hub. So the whole idea was to develop a mechanism by which we could onboard specifically industrial partnerships. So obviously the European Open Science Cloud is focused on science and research, but again, the European Commission would like us to kind of facilitate also our engagement with private industry, so we're reusing the existing mechanisms to do that. Again, with the European Open Science Cloud's spirit, it's to reduce the fragmentation. So we're doing this with the same thing with the Innovation Hub, which is that the individual infrastructures have had their own individual business engagement programs over the years. So what we're doing is we're bringing those together as well. So EGI's industry program and EUDAT and HPC centers, and trying to pull those together. This way, industry doesn't have to contact 3 or 4 different people to access the services. We can kind of have a single central contact point with a wider set of services available. So we are focused on startups and SMEs, but we're not only limited to them. So it's not a strict restriction. We started with 6 business pilots. I'll go into a little bit more detail about those, but these initial 6 were just trying to get the Innovation Hub up and running, and then we would be onboarding them additional pilots over the course of the project. We are setting up this Digital Innovation Hub to be the mechanism by which industry engages the European Open Science Cloud beyond the lifetime of the project. So this will live beyond the EOSC Hub project. So all of our branding and support and organizational structures are being set up with it in mind to persist beyond the life of the project. So these are the kind of the partners that we have with inside of it. So my organization, EGI, but also from Indico Data Cloud, which has software and services specifically around cloud. We brought in EUDAT, who offers a number of data management specific services. Then we have 2 HPC centers for high performance computing, so PSNC in Poland and Cineca, which is in Italy. And then F6S is our partner who is supporting us with commercialization and business coaching support inside of the project. So we have almost 50 different services by which industry can access. We have 25 partners that are currently involved with 6 pilots that are running. So this kind of the objectives of the Innovation Hub. So it's not only about offering access to the infrastructure resources to support pilots and prototyping and scaling, performance verification, testing, this kind of concept of test before you invest. But we would like to kind of facilitate partnerships as well. So not just being pure consumers of services, but actually joining in on partnerships so that we can bring you together, not only with the research services, but with the investors as well. So this is through our partner F6S, who has a large network of the investor community. We are a European or an international level innovation hub. So what we can do is offer increased visibility on that kind of scale, which is something that, let's say, smaller companies don't always have access to. They have limited resources. They're in a local, smaller market. Most of their resources are being invested in research and into the development of their actual services. So getting the visibility on a European scale provides quite a high level of value. I mentioned before the business coaching, training to accelerate market uptake, trying to support access to future funding and grants, and then overall support this kind of long-term business relationships. So what happens after the pilot, after you've conducted a pilot, what happens after the pilot, and do we have, let's say, a longer-term business relationship as an additional opportunity? So we've kind of organized these services into 4 main blocks. So one of them is in this kind of piloting and co-design, so proof of concepts, performance verification, testing, giving it access to these technical services, so compute services in all scales, whether it's the traditional grid, distributed computing, high performance computing cloud, different storage facilities, data management, access to the data that's already available, reusing tools and applications, and then coupling that together with training and support. So giving you very specific technical consultancy, something that you just don't always get with a credit card. Service management, so how to organize your services internally to be able to then professionalize the service delivery, commercialization, business coaching, brokering funding opportunities, and then trying to give some level of visibility. So either in newsletters, articles, the websites, invitations to our events. We have a number of print materials. So we'll be coming out with a brochure of the success stories of the business pilots. If you have a service that you would like others to use, we can include this in the EOSC marketplace and kind of facilitate the networking. So just kind of for completeness, I have additional slides that you guys can see for all of the piloting and co-design. So you have the platforms as a service, software as a service that you can integrate with the existing services. You can do product design, so team up with our experts, or you can test them in a specific environment that we set up for you. We do a lot of benchmarking and verification of existing services to kind of showcase that yes, your specific solution can run in a cloud environment. I won't go through every one of these tools and services, but it kind of just gives you a sense of the scale of services. So we have different types of compute. We have, let's say, a standard authentication and authorization so that you can use your existing credentials to access the services. The tools and applications, here you can see that we have a number of different scientific communities that are building on top of it. So climate analytics to structural biology to physics to Earth observation. So because we're offering the underlying infrastructure resources, we're kind of almost sector or domain agnostic from this point of view, where anybody can kind of build on top or integrate on top of it. And then there's some technical tools like applications on demand or notebooks, if you guys have heard of Jupyter notebooks. And then EUDAT offers a number of different storage services for sharing data or storing data or having data in secure environments, or B2Find to be able to find available open data sources. The data hub for integrating or pulling together different data repositories. And then there's even the services for that they're developing, I believe, in the Nordic countries for sensitive data. So training and support, some of them is just basically having technical consultancies. We do the service management training specifically on a lightweight service management standard, which is called FIT-SM. It's basically a scaled down version of ITIL or ISO 20000 standards. Through our partners F-Success, we offer commercialization and business coaching. And then as you can see, we kind of look at the different funding opportunities from around, let's say, the Horizon 2020 projects and try to make that information available and then potentially bringing on board into future projects. And then the visibility of the services, there's not much more to say about this other than we run a number of events across the course of the year. So we've even we had demo booths of our business pilots. We can try to add you to the marketplace and then just kind of facilitate this overall networking initiatives. So there's a couple of mechanisms that we've set up to try to facilitate this. So the vouchers. So right now on the EOSC-hub website, we're offering these free trial offers. So right now it's roughly €250 worth of services. So this is a full clicking process. You go into the website, you can just sign up and be running VMs in a cloud. But then we've also done giveaways. So like at the ICT booth in Vienna at the end of December, we gave away €5,000 worth of services. This isn't actual hard cash, but it's to be able to offer, let's say, a concrete package of services that are available. So we have additional options. This is just based off of the different use cases. This is the EOSC marketplace where we can make services available. And what we're working on at the moment is this kind of collaboration platform to where we can have an area in which we can, let's say, more dynamically exchange information and contact between ourselves. This isn't live yet, but it's just kind of something that we're working on to kind of build up or facilitate the community as a whole. So let's just to talk a little bit about the initial 6 business pilots that we used to kind of kick off the Digital Innovation Hub. So here you can see that the 6 different pilots are in a number of different sectors. So for an example, like Action Seaport, this is about improving safety of operational performance in seaports. We have one that's building a cloud framework for space weather. We have another that's running using data cloud services to manage algae blooms, so for environmental areas. We have another one that's working in more security related to kind of prevent botnet attacks. Smart video analysis, so this is a cloud-based platform for analyzing sport performance. So they do video analysis. In fact, they were the winners of the best demo at the EOSC-hub week in Prague last month. And then finally, we have other ones that are using data analytics. They have a platform as a service for analyzing the latest trends in the further industry. So what else I think is quite interesting about these business pilots is that they are each in, let's say, different stages of development, and they each had, let's say, different goals on where they wanted to get to in terms of maturity. So we kind of reused the concept of technology readiness levels. So there's the different levels from it's an idea, you have a proof of concept, you have almost the final product that's being tested, to all the way to TRL 8 and 9, which means it's basically commercial ready. So these different business pilots kind of started at different maturity levels. So for an example, Action Seaport, they were kind of already at a mature state and they wanted to do some final testing before moving it to market. Whereas the Draco Observatory was somewhere in the middle. Again, CyberHab was towards the end, looking to move this into market. Whereas bot mitigation, you can see that this was just an idea that they had, that they wanted to see if they could basically create a prototype based off of their idea. Smart video analysis, they had, let's say, an initial stages of a prototype that they really wanted to use the Digital Innovation Hub to kind of mature their services and take it almost to market. And right now they're doing early adopter testing, and that's pretty quite similar to what the data for an application is doing, is really wanting to take their prototype, do some final product validation, some early adopter testing, and then move this to market. So I think the message here is that you don't already have to have a mature service. You could have an already mature service, but we kind of try to tailor to anybody wherever they're at in the TRL level. One interesting anecdote is Action Seaport, actually, the company was called Action Modulars. Over the course of their pilot, they were acquired by a large enterprise, which was called Bentley Systems. And as of recent, we've heard that the smart video analysis, the company, Moxoff is the company, they're moving from an SME to a large enterprise status. So this is quite positive in saying some of the changes that have happened to the pilots working with us. So I think this is kind of really my last slide before I move to any questions that you may have, which is kind of why should industry engage with the European Open Science Cloud? Well, I think we do have a diverse set of services that we have made available. So it really kind of tailors to not only what do you need, but how do you want to get involved. Try to exploit the research data. So we're really trying to push open research data and then stimulate companies that can use that data and build on top of that data. Offering the expertise, so academic and researchers have a wealth of knowledge that they're willing to make available, to work with industry as well, to provide this wide visibility on a European and an international scale, and then try to facilitate funding opportunities. I think the efforts that have gone in the back end to kind of build up this open science cloud does kind of simplify a little bit of what is available, so providing this single point of access for discovery, request, and access of the services and expertise, so you don't have to run around and try to talk to everybody individually. Collaborate on a European international scale, so move beyond maybe your local or regional area. Promote services that you have available. So we just have rules of participation, just making sure that there is some type of systematic approach to onboarding and inclusion. And then also there's the potential for participating in the procurement framework. So that's mainly for, let's say, individual industries, but yet we also want to pull together and collaborate with other digital innovation hubs, because the European Commission wants to create this kind of pan-European network of digital innovation hubs. So we're definitely interested in working together, especially because I think what we've found is that a lot of the other digital innovation hubs are very sector specific or they're regional specific. And I think one of the unique positionings of the European Open Science Cloud Digital Innovation Hub is that we offer these kind of general services which could be used by others. So I think there's a real opportunity for us to collaborate with other digital innovation hubs, and we have a number of collaborations that are ongoing. So I just stuck here at the bottom a number of logos. I'm not going to go into the middle of it, but I mentioned that we are looking to onboard new pilots, and we're looking to establish new collaborations and new partnerships. And as we kind of do the promotion and start to get our message out, and this is something that we were really looking to do with this webinar today, is just kind of promote that what we have and what we're offering. And we have basically a number of additional collaborations that are at, say, various stages of discussion that we hope to do some announcements and inclusion in the website in the coming months. So obviously I coordinate the Innovation Hub and I'm the one speaking today, but there is a large team behind us. So I'd just like to give some acknowledgement to the rest of the team members from PSNC in Poland and Schnecke in Italy, and PSNC, and Dave Wright, who's joined the call as well from UCL and in the UK. So here is the link to the website where you can find more information. For those of you guys who are on Twitter, please follow us at EOSC_DIH, or if you have any specific questions or follow-up outside of the webinar, you can contact us at business@eosc-hub.eu. So with that, I guess I will turn this back over to Ben, because I haven't been following what questions have come through, but I think I've left enough time for us to have a little bit of a Q&A session.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation, Sai. At the moment, so if you have a question, please pose it in the questions tab of the webinar application. At the moment, I'm not seeing any questions, but I have a question myself. So I'm I'm a middle stage PhD student, and I have a question like, if I leave with my degree and I want to have a startup, it seems that a good portion of your work is dealing with startups. Can you give an idea of the percentage of, let's say, of startups that percentage of your services is startups, if that's clear?
So I guess the question would be, out of the ones who are already collaborating with us, how many of them are startups?
Yes.
So I would say probably 10%, because we deal with, because we're in the research and academic space, a lot of the contacts we have are with spin-outs. So spin-outs from universities, which are actually quite interesting because they already have somewhat of an idea of how they can kind of bridge between the infrastructure services and the research services, and they want to basically see how they can go to market. So for an example, one of the new business pilots that actually won the 5K giveaway that we had is called Campo Data Solutions, and they are a university spin-out. But that's just in our EOSC space, but I know that there is a number of say, European initiatives that are dedicated to supporting startups. But I would say the majority of that we're working with are small, they call them SMEs, but SMEs can really range between very small and medium. And I would probably say that we've been dealing with people more in the very small categories. So let's say up to like 10 employees.
Okay. What's the average pilot length of a pilot project? Do you have a statistic on that?
Yeah, so the new ones that we've been running, we've been saying on average of 6 months. So it can be as low as 3 months, but we try to limit it to nothing more than 12 months. This is mainly because of the amount of services that you would have to be made available, which also increased cost. But also we would like to have let's say, a concentrated work plan. So the initial 6 that we started with ran a little bit longer because we did an open call for applications. They had a very specific product development roadmap that they were going to take over. But let's say if you were going to run just a pure proof of concept, that's only going to be a couple months because you already have an existing application that you want to port. But if you want to do a co-development of services, so this development roadmap, that's probably going to take a little bit longer. So I would say between 3 to 6 months, but no more than 1 year.
Okay, thank you. I think with that, I still have not received any questions through the webinar. I would like to thank you one more time, Sai, for the great presentation. And I would like to remind everybody who listened in or will be that this webinar will be recorded and put on the CompBioMed website. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody in attending and hope you have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody, for those who joined, and I hope to hear from you offline.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.